Predicting and preventing risk. You can spot trends in data to address risk before they escalate. So example is noticing a gradual increase in failed transactions and collaborate with engineers to investigate and fix this issue. And as a PM, like if you have this skill, right, you don't have to wait for your data engineer to spot this. You can go ahead to use Metabase if that's what your company uses and write your queries and get this data. So what are the common databases we have, right? I know I've been saying SQL, right? But SQL is just one of the type of databases that we have. But the common ones are just two, like that are commonly used in the industry today. We have SQL, which is what I'm going to be discussing about. So SQL is a way to talk to databases that store information in tables like Excel sheets. So it's like Excel. If you've used Excel, that's how a database looks like. This is what people have not seen how a database looks like. So it has the rows, the columns, you have the header, like the name, the price, the location, etc., right? SQL helps you find, update, organize this information. An example of this is MySQL, Postgres, Microsoft SQL, and SQLite. Then we have NoSQL. NoSQL is for databases that don't use tables. Instead, they store information in flexible formats like documents, key value pairs, or graphs. This makes NoSQL great for handling large, complex, or rapidly changing data. Example, the most common one is MongoDB. Then we also have Firebase. Like I mentioned, these are not the only databases that we have. There are other types of DB, like new SQL databases, which combines the capability of NoSQL database and the properties of SQL databases. We have the time series database, we have graph databases, and we have key value stores. These are not really common. These are used probably to improve performance in applications, but as a PM, you might not really need any of this, right? But it's just to know that there are other types of databases apart from SQL and NoSQL. So why SQL? SQL is used across industries, is very common amongst fintechs, e-commerce is a very common database, right? It is versatile and powerful. It lets you aggregate data. You see, most of the banks in Nigeria today, a lot of them use Oracle SQL. So you can see the reason why, one of the reasons why Oracle is powerful is because of the SQL solution that it provides to big industries like banks. It's also a common tool in companies. Example for me, all the companies I've worked with, is only one of the companies that don't use SQL and they use NoSQL, right? So it's really, really common. And if you learn SQL, it's helping you make data-driven decisions and not decisions based on vibes. So let's do an introduction to SQL databases. SQL databases help you store data in structured formats for easy access and analysis. So like I explained, it's like an Excel sheet, right? Each Excel sheet has its column and its row, and each column represents a data like the name, the age, and each row represents a data for a particular resources. So example, we want to store my information. It's going to be stored on a row, and the column is used to identify. Example, the name, the age, the date of birth, the address, etc. That is what this is used for. So we have the table, which is, like I said, like Excel. We have the schema. So the schema is the name, the age, and etc. Then we have the primary key. So primary key is the unique identifier for a record. And the best way I can use to explain this is like your employee ID, right? So once you join a company, they give you a particular ID, which is used to identify you in that company. So, and that is how a primary key works in a database. So how does database look like, right? So database in its raw format is not beautiful, right? It is writing commands on its own, like using your terminal or Power CLI. But if there's a graphical user interface for you to access your DB, it looks something like this, what we have here. And you have your tables, you have where you can run your queries, and you have your the table details, right? So like I mentioned, it looks like an Excel sheet. So you can see this one. we have the email, we have the ID, which is 1, 2, 3. We have the first name, we have the last name, and we have other tables by the side. So SQL basics. The first part of SQL is selecting, right? So select is if you want to retrieve data, you select the data you want to retrieve. So let's say we have a data of users. The first thing I'm going to start with is writing a select. Then what do you need? Do you need the ID? Do you need the name? Do you need the user ID? Do you need the address? So that way you start from. Then you have the from, like from where do you want to retrieve this data from, right? And which is you want to retrieve from the users. And where? So where helps you to filter records. So let's say you want to filter where the age is between 15 and 20 years old, right? Like maybe targeting university students. And join is also used to combine two data. So imagine by combining two Excel sheets. So let's say you have your employee data on an Excel sheet and you have their their states. You have a list of states in an Excel sheet, and you want to combine these states and the users, like to identify which states the user came from. So these are what is join is used for. Then group by is used to summarize data. So this might look confusing at the moment, but we're going to have a small workshop that I'm going to use to explain this. But this is how it looks like. This is a simple query on how this looks like. So we are going to be having a quick workshop. But before we have the quick workshop, does anyone have questions that they want to ask before we get to start this?
Yes. So someone posted a question using the like Q&A question. It said, "What are the use cases of SQL?" If this is correct, let me just open that quickly. Let's say, what are the use cases for using SQL? Do you want to quickly answer that before you proceed?
Yeah, so the use cases, like every company, right, or every tech company, they store data somewhere, right? Your banks, Jumia Food, Chowdeck, etc. Like they store data somewhere, right? And where they store this data, they store it in a database. And like I mentioned earlier, most of the common databases we have is SQL. And using SQL is like when you store this data, we need to be able to retrieve information, right? So I'm going to use Chowdeck, for example. If Chowdeck wants to know the number of sales they made per day, right? They have to go into the place they store this data and write an SQL query. So Mixpanel is used to like I'm not sure it's not the same thing as SQL. So Mixpanel is used to like track events, right? So you still need SQL. You might have a data person in your company, right? But you still need SQL because Mixpanel will not give you the big data that you're looking for, right? All the data of the company or the app is stored on SQL. So I'm going to give an example, right? Let's say for GT Bank or every transaction that is made is not stored in Mixpanel. It's stored into a database, which, like I mentioned, is mostly going to be an SQL DB. And if they want to like know like the transactions you've performed for the last 3 months, right? What they can just do is to get your user ID and query on the transactions table. So imagine transaction is an Excel sheet, right? And it has your identity. Like identity is like the employee ID I mentioned earlier. They can use the transaction does not contain only your transaction, it contains everyone's transaction. But you want to be able to get your identity right. You want to be able to know that okay, are people really using are people really transferring, like what day do they transfer the most, right? So let's say you want to build a feature where you want to be showing a banner on the app at a particular point in time. If you want to check the time that people really transact, right, you have this data on your DB. What you have to do is to query as the query your DB for where transactions is at the highest, right? So if you know SQL very well, you're able to do your joins, do your manipulation, and you're able to get like, okay, fine, people are always available at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on the app. They're always on the app by that time transacting. Mixpanel might give you that data, but SQL will give you that accurate data. Like this is the time people actually send money. So at that point in time, you can now drop your ad. Exactly. Yeah. By the way, I'm not good at Excel like that. By the way, I'm more of I'm better at SQL than Excel. But yeah, I think Excel is the easiest way I can use to explain. So it gives you the data that you want, which Mixpanel is not going to give you like that. So I think that is one of the reasons why I'll say like you can use Mixpanel with SQL though, like in your app, but you still need SQL to be able to get real data insights. Hi James, yeah.
Yeah, I think before we take James, someone posted like a question earlier. That's from Mohammed. He said, how much of a difference does it make as a PM with SQL or versus a PM with no SQL skills? Then we can take James.
So yeah, so that question is this, right? Like let's like I mentioned earlier, like it's a two yeah, it's a skill added to your two belts, right? And let's say you have two PMs of the same skill level, right? And one knows SQL, right? I think personally, as a business owner, you want to employ the one that knows SQL because you know the person will be able to relate with your engineer more. By the way, I meant PM on the same level, not a PM that is below the other PM. But let's say you have two PMs on the same level. Imagine yourself as the maybe business owner, the CEO, or the who writes. Okay, I'll get to that. So imagine yourself at that as that person, right? And you have two PMs applying to your office, right? To your startup, and one has SQL knowledge and one does not have SQL knowledge. That edge alone is why they would choose the person with SQL because the person with the great PM skills and also has SQL knowledge that can use to relate to the engineers more. They would choose that person over person that has the same knowledge but has no technical knowledge. Let me just put it that way. So I won't say it makes you a bad PM if you don't know it, right? But it just gives you that edge. I don't know if I answered that, Mohammed.
All right. Thank you very much, Oluwole. I'm sure, yeah, Mohammed already gave you feedback. So, James, we can actually have you now. Then, Oluwole, you can proceed with with the
No problem.
presentation. Then we take questions afterward. I think James is the last question we take. Then we can continue.
All right. So good day, guys. My question is, I'm not very this SQL thing. I really want to learn it, and so let me just run to the question. The question is, I work with a company that is we're doing the best to squash sheets, every Excel. We're using Copilot, and so now my question is, SQL. What exactly, if we're not using sheet like Excel or any documents at all, like my company wants to abolish sheets, what exactly, what benefit is Excel going to do, going to help, going to SQL going to help me as a product manager in this kind of company that is like trying to abolish it? I don't know, can SQL work in another kind of say Copilot or any other software? Like what
Okay.
other benefits can I get aside? You get me? I don't know if you do, but please.
Okay. Sir, I'm trying to. You say you work in. I didn't get the question, but you work in a company that's trying to abolish Excel sheet or SQL. I didn't get that.
Yeah, like the company is trying to take out everything sheet because we've had a lot of sheets. So we're trying to take out sheet
Okay.
that we are using Copilot to like migrate data to Copilot and then with time take out all the other sheets. So that's where the question comes in, like how do I get to use my SQL skill when I eventually learn them, like when this company is not using the sheets anymore.
Okay. Okay. So are they? What does the company do? Let me start with that. What do they do?
We are into vehicle financing.
Oh, okay. Where do they store their
So
data at the moment?
um Copilots, CodeDB.
Okay, Copilot called DB. I've not heard of that,
Yeah.
sadly. So it will be hard for me to answer that. But depending on the DB, right? Like I mentioned, most DBs are like most the common DBs are either NoSQL or SQL, right? And even for NoSQL, I think that's very it's not that common, but even though it's common, I think if you have a knowledge of SQL, right, you can easily just learn NoSQL. And and no knowledge is wasted, right? Like, let me just put it like you won't work in that company forever. That I think that's one thing,
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
Yeah, exactly.
Agreed.
And yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of the things we should also look at. So I think you should still go ahead to learn it. I put some
Yeah,
resources here, but which we can use to get started. But yeah, let me continue with the
yeah.
sample, right?
Thank you very
Then
much. No knowledge is wasted. I got that, and that's very important for me. Thank you very
exactly. So let me share this. Um, yeah. So we're going to be like seeing how a database works. Something small, right? So this database is an open source DB, right? It has like data that we can use to query. I want to just give you an example how it looks like. So it's a music store. So this is like let's say you have a I don't know if it still exists though, but when I was young, there was always this like where you go to rent films, right? You go there, you rent a film, you watch it in your house, then once you are done, you return it back. So something like this, like that, but not really like that. Let's say this one is you're buying music albums, and they have a DB to record this data because, and if you notice, if everybody knows about the film, the renting of film, that always happen that they have a record of book where they write like, oh, maybe James borrowed this movie and he's going to return it on so dates. So we are going to we're going to like switch it to a point where it's automated, like using MySQL, right? But this is going to be a music store where you can buy your albums, and we want to know the employee that sold a particular album and all of that. So this link, I've shared it. You can access it even after this webinar, and it has it has this data, right? The album, it stores the album information. I'm going to use the renting of film as an example again, right? So you have the directors of the film, right? Or you have the movies, and the movie stores the movie information. So we have the album that stores the album information. We have the genre that stores the music genre. So like maybe like rock, jazz, Afrobeats, etc. Artists like the band, Whiskey, Davido, it stores the information. The employee, let's say Wale is the employee that works at the store and they assist the customers. Then we have the customer, maybe Odunayo or James and or Basit that are the customers to come to the store to get an album. Then we have the invoice. Like once you buy an album, you get an invoice, right? And we have invoice line. So I'm going to explain the difference between invoice and invoice line. So invoice invoice line is the list of movies of albums that you have, right? So you can go to the store, buy 3 albums. Probably you're buying Davido's album, Wizkid's album, and then Burna Boy's album, right? The 3 combines to make one invoice. So those albums are invoice line because they are each their items on their own that makes up this invoice. Then we have the media type. So let's say these are also digital album, which is the MP3 AAC. This is just to store that. Then we have playlists. So if a customer wants to create their playlists, and each track on that playlist. So this playlist is the same thing as invoice and invoice line. I'm going to explain this better, but yeah, just see it as this. So this stores track details, including the album and the genre. So that's the track. So if you group by the relations, right? We have the artists that represent the artist or band. We have the album. Each album is created by an artist. The track, each track belongs to an album and has a genre and the media type. So artist, Wizkid, album, I'm trying to remember a Wizkid's album. Sounds from the other side. Let's use the example. Track, one of the track on the Wizkid's album. Genre, like Afrobeats, part of the track. Media type, let's say is MP3. So we can see the references, album reference artists via artist ID. I look at this from Spotify's point of view too. Like if you're doing a Spotify app, right, it's almost like this, something like this, actually, like artist, album, track, genre, media type. And I'm going to give you another example of how knowing like having data knowing how to use SQL can help you in decisions. So if I give an example of Spotify's Spotify rap, right? They released this, like, if I want to know, like, okay, fine, when can I release this year Spotify rap, right? Like at which time I can do an SQL query to run, and like, okay, which time people listen to track the most, and I will just like, okay, fine, this is the time we should launch it, right? So when people are opening their app and they are seeing Spotify rap. So those are kind of decisions you can easily make if you know how to do SQL. By the way, like I mentioned, you can have a data science, you can have a data engineer in your company that can do this for you, but imagine you have this knowledge and you can just do it yourself. It gives you that edge. So we have the customer invoice, the invoice line. The customer, like I mentioned, represents the customer makes the purchase. Invoice represents the invoice for a customer's purchase. And invoice line represents individual line items in an invoice. So like I explained, this invoice line can be the 3 albums that you bought, and the invoice is the payment of the invoice line, and the customer is James. Then we have playlist and playlist track, but let's forget about that. So now I'm going to be showing how like this kind of works, right? Give me a moment. So I'm going to show you a database, present something else, entire screen. Let me still know if you can see my screen. All right. So we have the database here, basically. So we have the album, we have the artists, we have the customers, we have the employee, we have the genre, we have the invoice, we have the invoice line, we have the media type, we have the playlist track. So let's say I want to get all the artists on my DB, right? Like all the artists that I have in my store. So I'm going to have select, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to start with select. Then start, this time means select all. But let's say I want to get only the name of the artist. So I can just put select name. From is like from which table, like from where am I trying to get this? So I'm going to put artists. By the way, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
All right.
we can see your screen.
All right. So if I should do select name from artists, sorry, didn't run that very well. Okay, and I run it. So I can see all the artists I have here. Right. So I can see AC/DC, Accept, Aerosmith, Alice in Chains, Antonio, Apocalyptica. I can see all of this, right? If I want to get everything, all the columns, right? This is just getting the name alone. I can just use star, and star gives me all the columns on that DB. So we have the artist ID. And I told you the primary, which is the primary key. I think primary key is like your employee ID, and we can see it in play here, which is the artist ID. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can also do album. Let me get all from albums. So these are all the albums I have in my store. So we have for those about to rock, we salute you. We have Balls to the Wall, Restless and Wild, and we have the artist ID. So like I mentioned, like there's something called relationships in my SQL. And what it does is look at like 2 Excel sheets, right? We have this Excel sheet of album and we have Excel sheet of artists. How do we identify the artist that sang, that owns that album, right? So that was called relationship. So we have the artist ID that we have present here. I'm putting it here. So let's say I want to get all the albums of Backbeats I have. I can do select star from album. Where? So remember that where that I mentioned earlier. So where artist ID, it equals to, so was it Backbeat I mentioned? Yeah, let's just go with Backbeats. So we can see Backbeats ID is 9, artist ID is 9. So I'm going to just put 9 and click on run. So I only have one album of Backbeats, and it's a Backbeat soundtrack. Let's say I want to get for Led Zeppelin. I can just do 22. Look at this and get it. And he has a lot of album, right, in my store. So we can see everything here. And we have other complex queries, which is present here, right? let's say I want to count the number of tracks that I have in my store. I can do this, and I have 3,503 tracks. I want to count the number of artists also. So I can do, so select count, this time means all, like count all as the name of the column, what you want to give it as. If I don't put this as here, it's just going to appear as count star. But I want to add the column name, I just put total tracks, and it's going to give me this. If I want to count the number of albums I have, the same thing, put this as total album, and it gives me this. So I have 147 albums. The other things I can do again, find all tracks and their corresponding album names. So I can get all the tracks. So like, let's say we have the Wizkid's album, right? I want to get all the tracks of those albums, not just the album name, but all the tracks in the album. I can easily do this. And you can see the track name, the album title. And the way it is this is where the join comes in, like I mentioned in the earlier slide, right? You can see the join, combine data from multiple tables. So imagine combining two Excel sheets. So we have select track.name as track name, album.title as album title from track, right? We are getting from track, but album is missing. So how is it going to get combine this together? So I'm going to join album on, this might be tricky a bit, but just try to imagine. I'm going to share a tutorial after this, and you'll be able to work with this data I'm working with here. So on track.album ID is equals to album.album ID. I'm not going to explain this so that it doesn't confuse, but let's just say that it gives us all the tracks for each album. So example, for those about to rock with Salotri, we can see all the albums here. So let's say for Wizkid's new album, we'll see all the tracks there, and we'll see the album title there. And even if you want to join to the artist, right? The same thing. Join artists. Yeah, so join artist on artists.artist ID equals to album.artist ID. Then now add artists.name as artist name. So you can see the album, you can see the artist name also. So you can see as I'm pulling all of this information, because I have the data, it's just I just need to know how to access it from here. Give me a moment. Yeah. So we also have you want to count the tracks by genre. So let's say like, oh, okay, how many tracks do I have? Like how many distant genre do I have in, like you want to get the genre and the number of tracks that falls under that genre. You can easily do that with SQL. And you can see that all this data I have, I'm writing all these magical things to get this information. So that for rock, we have 1,197 tracks. For jazz, we have 130. For metal, we have 374. For alternative and pop, 332. Sadly, no Afrobeats here, but we can easily get all of this information by using this. What else again? Let me see. Okay, so calculate total sales per customer. You want to see like maybe how much each customers have spent. You can easily do that and get this. So we can see Luis Gonzalez spent 39.62, probably not Naira, probably USD. So you can see how much they've spent so far. And this is combining the customer and the invoice. The invoice, like I said, the invoice is the payments basically, right? So it's combining those two tables to get that information. And with this, you can see like, okay, fine. You can, let's say you want to carry out research on like, oh, how come Luis Gonzalez pays more money? And I mean, okay, this is not order. So there's another command called ordered by, right? So I can order by, I hope I'm doing it in the right way. I think I meant to do it before group by. Well, let me try it. Okay, yeah. Order by invoice total. Okay, so like you see, not everyone is perfect. group by customer. Okay, so let's just ignore that for now. But you can also order by. But I'm not going to use the GUI for now to do that, right? Which is going to do. So you can use SQL, write it, and make sure that it is ordered. So you can, like, why does Elena spend a lot and Pooja does not spend a lot, right? So we can now compare. Okay, maybe Pooja joined at a particular date and Elena joined at a particular date. So imagine my customer so that spends $3, right? Why that customer spend $3 and stopped coming, right? Like, what can we do? What product can we bring to make sure that customer comes back? So you can start already making decisions already from viewing this data. And that's the advantage we get from like knowing how to manipulate data on your own. Because truth be told, even though you have a data engineer in your company, right, as you are trying to go through this data and you're like, oh, you need to get this information, you have to wait for a data engineer to be available before they can get you this information. But if you can do this by yourself, you're already going through this data and you're already making critical decisions, making improvements, like, okay, fine, we can try this and we can launch it. You can also join multiple tables to find places and total numbers of track in each, but we're going to skip that. Let me see. Yeah, I think let me just continue sharing the. Oh, how was the data? Okay, I'm going to get to that. Just give me a moment. Preview. Can I do this from here? Sorry, give me a moment. Think. Yeah. So that was a quick workshop to show. I mean, I'm going to answer your questions, right? To show how it works. This is the first webinar, right? Just to show what you can do. There'll be more, like there's another one by February 13, which are going to dive deep into it, right? Build a simple CBA transactions, hands-on SQL training, and how ChatGPT can also help you to simplify complex queries in case you put out database in the company. But yeah, sorry. Okay, let me start. I'm trying to see which question I should start with.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions, but like this has been a very, very insightful session. OLUWOLE, I think it's a lot to digest. Yeah, but like I learned a lot from this. So there are a couple of questions in the Q&A bot, and there are also like some in the chat box. There will those people that actually raised their hand. So let me just ask. So this person is asking, what tool is this? Like, what tool did you just use to like query these data that you're using?
Okay.
How do
Yeah.
you get access to these two?
Okay, so like I mentioned, there are database GUI, right? That you can use to connect to your database. So let's say database is I'm trying to see how best I can explain it. In its raw form, right, is just exist on its own, right? But you can use like applications to access it. So example is, let me just use an Excel sheet, right? You can use Microsoft Excel to open an Excel sheet. If you use Mac, you can use numbers. Is it numbers they use? No, no numbers, but yeah, you can use, yeah, I think it's numbers, yeah, to open it on Mac. Or you can use Google Sheets to open the document. So, and that's how database is too, right? There are a lot of GUIs out there. So the GUI I'm using is called Table Plus. Let me look for it and get the link to you. Yeah, so it's called Table Plus, and that I use to like query. I love it a lot because the user experience is really, really cool. And if you can see the one here also, right? There are a lot of GUIs out there that can make you access your DB. So, but the one I currently used was called Table Plus, right? I saw a question: how did I move the data? How was database accessed and moved to MySQL? So data, the data is already in MySQL, right? It's just that how can I move to a database, right? So there's a tutorial that I'm adding. I can't explain everything here at the moment because if there's going to be a lot to digest. So there is a video I attached here, and the data I'm working with is also attached here. So I think probably before this webinar too, we can go ahead to watch this video and also use data to learn. So, but yeah, if I try explaining that, it might just cause more confusion. But I'm expecting that before the next webinar, we've watched this video We've explored the data. We've installed Table Plus, and yeah, we've done some things on our own. Let me see. What was that question again?
There are
What
people
kind
who they
of
don't know.
SQL? Okay.
So someone is asking here, Oluwole, I thought I was muted. That as a PM, is it the same access that a dev has to a database that will be given to a PM who wants to also check SQL?
So it depends on the company, right? But I know one thing: production DB won't be given to, like, limited access is going to be given to people, right? So for production DB, where is the sorry? let me for production DB, you have the same read access as long as you know how to read. Data is important to everyone: the PMs, the engineers, the CEO. Just request for access that you want to be able to query the data. I'm sure they're going to give you the limited access so that you don't go and delete the DB or override the DB. But yeah, you should have access to this.
Yeah. So someone is asking, Oluwole, what courses can you recommend for someone that wants to learn for starters, and also what's different between SQL and MySQL?
Okay, for the video on this, I added a video to learn. Like, start with that, right? Then from there you can get an academic course. But yeah, this is a free YouTube video that you can just watch. I think it's 3 hours long, and yeah, let me share the link so that's
Yeah, the slides will also be available on the community for those that probably want to go through it. So we'll take Emanuela's question, then Jacob, then we'll go back to the other questions that are currently in the chat.
no problem.
Hi, Emanuela.
Hi, thank you, Oluwole. Thank you. This was I think this has been the most simplified I've seen SQL. SQL nearly unalived me last year. I was learning on data camp. It nearly unalived me, and it just made it so cumbersome and difficult. And it's so complex. They explain it like, that's why maybe PMs we run away, because they just make it's so complex. So then my question is, do you teach people, because this bite-sized way you've just explained it was quite easy. Data camp nearly finished my blood.
Oh my God.
Did you teach? Because like I think I've just understood it, but the way you taught, and then it was just really simple. So do you teach? Do you offer classes or something that bite-sized like this that we can enroll to?
For now, no. But first, thanks for the compliments that I was able to break it down. I really appreciate that. For the classes, no, but I will see probably towards February or March. I'll see if it's something I can do. Yeah, I'll see if it's something I can do. But yeah, at the moment, sadly, no. But yeah, I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Let's have you, Jacob.
Okay, thank you very much, the facilitator. Just like my previous colleague has said, you really simplified this session, and thank you very much. So my question is this. So I currently work in a bank, and whenever I need data, I engage my channels team to provide this data for me. Right. So
did it take your time? Like, did it take time to provide this data? Hello.
Hi, Jacob. Can you hear Oluwole's question? That's probably his network. Maybe we should have Moses then come back to Jacob when his network is a little bit stable.
Yeah, let me just clear answer this question. So, difference between MySQL and SQL. So MySQL is a type of SQL, right? Structured query language. So like I explained, SQL is like Excel sheets, something like it looks like Excel sheets. So there are different. Hi Jacob. Okay, you're back. Let me just finish answering this question. Yeah, there are different SQLs. There's Postgres. They are almost the same language, to be honest. Just that maybe there are some things some database supports, some SQL database support, and the other database does not support. But truth be told, if you know how to use any SQL, like write any, even though it's down to Oracle, right? You can use MySQL or you can use Postgres. You can easily read data from this with the knowledge you have already. But I use MySQL in this sample because that's what I'm personally comfortable with and what I've worked with most. I've worked with Postgres, but not a lot. I've also worked with NoSQL. But yeah, SQL is just NoSQL and SQL are the two types of the most common types of database. And under SQL, we have different types of SQL. We have MySQL, we have Postgres, we have Oracle, a lot like that. So that's the difference between MySQL and SQL. Jacob, yeah, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. All right, so I'm saying that I get my data from my channels team whenever I need data for my analysis and my reporting. So I don't know, is it possible for me to know how to, maybe whenever they give me this access after completing the training from you or another person, whenever they give me this access, I'm able to connect my SQL to a Power BI and to my preferred
GUI.
yes, exactly. So I'm able to get online real-time reports to be able to monitor my applications and how my customers are faring. I don't know. Is it possible?
And yeah, so it's possible, yeah, but it depends on the company, right? If they are willing to give you the access. I know, for example, some companies, like you mentioned Power BI, right? They can connect the database to, I don't know who has heard of Metabase here, right? It's a common GUI that people can use to access the database, right? And it's just like, it's mostly like a read-only access. So it depends on the company, right? If you speak to them that you want to connect it directly to your Power BI, I'm sure they will be able to give you the access. They might not give you the credentials to read the DB, but they'll give you like maybe like a GUI that you can use, right? And what happens is, even if you have access to Metabase, some people don't know how to still read this data, right? And that is why, I said that it's better if PMs know how to use MySQL, because sometimes data engineers take time. Let me just put it like they actually take time. Like they're also busy, right? Are you asking them for something? Another person is asking them for something. Another person is asking them for something. But imagine you save that time and you're able to, because you know how to use SQL, you can just get your data by yourself. Yeah. Schemas. Samuel, let's go with. I don't know if
I'm going to take Moses first. Moses,
Okay,
then
Moses.
Samuel, then we can take any other questions in the chat.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, OLUWOLE. It was a very insightful session we had.
Thank you
I
very
was
much.
going to say something, a question actually during the course of your the workshop. So you had mentioned that there was Afrobeat wasn't included. I'm just the example you gave. Say for instance, you're going about trying to run these queries, and there was supposed to be a genre like Afrobeat, and that isn't included. How do you give that feedback to like run your analysis correctly?
Okay. So like feedback to who first? Let me.
Maybe your engineers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's a good question, to be honest. So, I'm assuming like probably like I'm going to imagine the scenario, right? Like let's say it is the company that puts the genres there, right? And you're like, okay, why is there no Afrobeats, right? So it depends. Might not even be the engineer. It might be a business decision, right? And you can use data to now convince your stakeholders, like, oh, okay, we need Afrobeats, right? And the reason why you knew is because you went to go and query the data, right?
Yeah.
You're able to say like, okay, there's no Afrobeats is missing. So you can write, let's say, I'm trying to picture the example, right? And give me a moment. I don't want to use the Afrobeats one. I'm trying to see a real life example that we can use. Okay, yeah. So let's say you are building a POS, right? And you only do card transactions, and you know the likes of Moniepoint, does card and bank transfer, right? And you create like you're new and you just gonna check the data and like, oh, okay, this is where the payment types are, and you need to say bank transfer. You can use that to create like, okay, fine. Like if we add bank transfer to our payments method, our numbers can jump up from this to this, right? And the reason why you figured that out is because you went to check the data, right? And you figured out that that is missing. And you can give the likes of like, oh, Moniepoint has bank transfer and they are doing numbers. So I think we need to add this, and it's going to give us more volume. And you can start with that, something like that. So it's you writing your PRD, right? Your product value, and using data to back that PRD up, right? And it's one of the things that you can do. Another thing again I've also seen about data is sometimes you and the person you report to can tell you something is not going to work, right? But you can go ahead to push that thing out, and once you push that thing out, it's just to go to query your data and go and show the person I report to, like, oh, see, I was right. I told you this is going to work, and you can see the numbers now. And I think I've experienced this before, right? And the reason why I was able to get this number was I went to DB to query it. In fact, we're not even tracking it. Like, I was just curious, like, okay, let me see what is going on. I went to DB to query it, and I saw, like, wow, this feature that I said to push, that they were against, my stakeholder was against, is actually being used by people. Yeah, exactly. So you can create a document to just show that, okay, fine, this is happening, and as you're bringing data, they have more confidence in you that, okay, this person knows what he's doing and is backing it up with data.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to just add something. Once someone commented and said they've had issues understanding SQL, I started, by doing a practice on a web page called SQL Bolt. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And that has really, this was just like a corroboration. It just helped me like to understand more of what you were doing. And I would suggest that everybody here could actually go try it out on Google. It's called SQL Bolt.
Can you share the link?
Yeah, sure.
You can actually drop that in the chat box also, Moses, so people can like just
it actually helped. And most of what you were saying was very easy for me to understand, because I've actually ran queries on the platform and it was very easy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. That's very awesome. Thank you. Hi, Samuel. Do you want to ask your question, or I should just give that slot to Rufus? So our time is fast spent, please.
Well, no, it's not a question. It's an announcement after.
Okay, awesome. Then I, Rufus, I think you'll be the last question for tonight. Do you want to like unmute your mic and just go quickly, please? Okay, if Rufus is not there, OLUWOLE,
yes, I would like to ask.
Yeah, you can go ahead, please. Hello?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't want to ask whether we can get. I don't want to ask whether we can get the recording of this section. Then
oh
the
yes, I replied
to
you.
because
I replied you in the
I can. This is very valuable, and I get a lot of value in what he has done so far this night.
Hi, Rufus, can you hear me?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the recording will be posted on YouTube, and Toby also shared that I'll be sharing all this information on
Yes,
the Slack
I can.
channel.
I can.
Yeah. So just be on the lookout on Slack and also on our YouTube page.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have just 1 minute left, Toby. I'm so sorry, guys, for taking up much of our time, but like I think we need to ask like these 2 questions, and we can call it like a wrap. Yeah. So this person asks, at what level should a PM know SQL? Entry, mid, or senior? Then this other person is asking, can you talk about the difference between schemas and instances? Do you want to quickly take that? Then
yeah. So for PMs, like I'll say, like start from somewhere, right? Entry level, that's fine. You can start from there. Then and the thing is, if you keep on doing something, you get better at it, right? I think I've been learning SQL since 2014. Yeah. So the more you do it, the more you get better at it. So yeah, just keep on doing that. Then what difference between instances and schema? So instance is the database, right? I think it's more of a technical. Instance is like you can have 2 database instance, right? So it's going towards scalability. So let's say it's going towards develop, but also instances are databases that you have. Why schemas are the tables, right? You have the user schema. So example in this, let me just quickly share. So this all user data is the instance, right? While this user is the schema. The table is also known as schema, right? The user schema, the project schema, item schema, addresses schema. And the schemas are like the properties of the table. So like these addresses, the schema of these addresses, the city, country, and passcode. For users, we have the email, first name, last name, active, etc, etc, etc. So those are the that's the difference between Insta. Insta is the old database, while schemas are the properties of your tables.
Awesome. Thank you very much, OLUWOLE ADEBIYI. It's been an awesome time on this call with you. I learned a lot, and I'm sure most people on this call have learned a lot also. And guys, this does not stop right here. We still continue like February 13th. Our webinars happen every second and last Thursday of every month. And for the next one, we'll be diving deep into the practical. So if you know you want to participate in the demos that we'll be having February 13th, when the posts are up, just indicate the first 2 to 3 people will pick them so that they can, have like a live practical. As OLUWOLE is doing you can also like be doing yours by the side. And it's not like you're just learning in theory, but you're also like learning in practical. You can actually see everything as it's selecting this, you're selecting that on your own computer, and you can see how everything is changing, and just diving in. So like we also have other events and other things we do and I'm sure Toby will also just speak on that. Toby, do you want to like go now before we call it a night?
That's pretty much it. So there are a couple of resources that OLUWOLE has mentioned are important for the next webinar, right? Because like Esther mentioned, it's going to be a full-blown workshop. It's very, very practical. So we will be sharing that on Slack as well. The link to join the Slack community is in the chat, so you can select that to join. So we also have other programs like the interview prep session, where you get to listen to people run through a mock interview session. Basically, there's the interviewer, there's the interview. You listen to them have an interview session, and then you can ask questions and learn from that. We also have the group mentorship session. The group mentorship session, instead of doing one-on-one mentorship, everybody bombards one individual. There's a senior product manager with questions, and we're all able to learn. Then there's weekly check-in calls bi-weekly on Saturdays. But you don't have to keep all of this in your head. We would post it on Slack. So just check the community on Slack and get more information. It's 8:03. Thank you very much. Follow us on YouTube. This video will be posted there.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Please keep engaging for more interesting things that we have this year planned out. And do enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend also. See you next week. Bye. Thank you, OLUWOLE, for
so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.